There's many options for hearing aids online, in stores, and with the recent development with over-the-counter hearing aid and the legislation through the United States government, the importance of high-quality information about different options is more important now than ever. Today, I'm here with Nic Klopper, who is the CEO of Herex Group out of South Africa, who also make the brand Lexi Hearing. Nic, how are you doing today? Tell us, what is Lexi and what is your role with Herex?
Ben, thanks for having me on the show. This is such a privilege to be on your show. So like you said, Lexi Hearing, brand new brand. We launched in August 20 in the US. The first foray for our company into direct-to-consumer and the new coming OTC legislation, OTC hearing aids. But maybe before I get into that, maybe I can give you a 2-minute background, just kind of who Herex is and kind of what we do. So we're a technology-focused company. So very strong R&D backing and research backing. Our founders are, professors of audiology and engineering. And the idea of the company is to develop innovative technologies and solutions, not just for the end consumer, but also for clinicians and enterprise customers. For today's conversation, I think we'll be focusing on Lexi and the brand we built around the direct-to-consumer hearing aids. And my role is as CEO. We're a South African-based company with our first launch into the US last year with a brand named Lexi.
Amazing. And I have a note that a reporter explained that Lexi is potentially democratizing and decentralizing access to hearing care. How have you utilized technology to achieve that so far?
Ben, so that's really our motto and vision as a company. Where we came from, coming from humble beginnings as a social enterprise, coming from South Africa, that's the main goal, right? Providing access to people which could not have previously either afforded hearing aids or had access to that. Of course, the same challenges exist in even markets like the US where penetration rates are, around 30%. So how we've utilized technology was in multiple ways. So what I can mention first is how does Lexi work and how does the product offering work? So firstly, it's a direct-to-consumer hearing aid solution that you can purchase online. We have 2 payment options available. First, you can purchase as a one-time payment of $799, or you can purchase it on a subscription, which is by far our most popular payment option for our customers. And the reason for that is we include, for 2 years, a full service delivery model where you can get all your batteries, tips, domes, accessories, and breakage and loss insurance included in your bundle, which means that for the next 2 years, when our customers opt in for our service, they don't have to worry about anything. We send everything to their home. So convenience first. The other advantage, as well as working with subscription models, are that you have the ability to opt out. So you don't like our offering, you cancel subscription and you walk away. So no contracts, and of course also no credit checks. But once you purchase the hearing aids online, we send the devices to your home, except if you've purchased them in store, and we'll get to that later. And then once you've received the hearing aids, you download an app, so both available on Android as well as iOS. We set up your hearing aids through the app, so we do a hearing check through the application where we test your hearing ability. We then customize your hearing aids to your hearing ability and then set your hearing aids up through the app. That takes around 7 minutes. And then we have the ability for our customers to engage with one of our hearing experts and also to opt in for our Lexi Rewards program.
Thank you. And I have a note as well that through Herex that your team has touched over 1.5 million lives. Outside of Lexi hearing different online or in-person hearing aid options, how is Herex touching over 1.5 million lives? What else have you guys done?
Ben, that's a very good question. So the traditional business, before we launched Lexi, developed these enterprise and medical grade technologies. So we have products in 197 countries around the globe. These range from in-clinic audiometric assessments that a typical audiologist into a doctor can use, to smartphone otoscopes that has AI that diagnoses typical ear pathologies, to online hearing assessments, which are used by big retailers in the US. It's used by clients like the WHO, 23andMe, and to name a few. And across the segment of our enterprise solutions, in the last 5 years, we have tested and identified hearing losses in 1.5 million people across 197 countries.
And Nic, one thing I've found is just more and more important here is as there are more and more online hearing aid options, And for those who have hearing loss or tinnitus, having quality information, understanding how my health, maybe my online test results, maybe an in-person audiogram, the situations that I'm struggling with, how that can be best improved through technology, because all this hearing technology is not all created equal, and the professional services to go with it can also be a differentiating factor. What have you seen? You're CEO of this company. I'm sure you're in many meetings, understanding the data that's coming in. How is Lexi Hearing being received? And what is important for the consumer, for the customer, in terms of helping them hear their friends and family better?
Yeah, and it's a very complicated question, right? Because it's not just one facet of the product or the service delivery model. I think it's the combination of, a couple of key topics. And I can maybe mention a couple which we have seen drive, great patient outcomes. And I'm sure we'll learn a lot still, in the coming years as we develop and improve the product. Firstly, what we have seen is the customization of the hearing aid to someone's hearing profile is very important. Also a nice differentiator for us compared to a lot of the current offerings in specifically the online market available. That has driven a lot of customer success for us. And also we have, according to the data available to us, definitely one of the lowest return rates in the industry. And that's, of course, due to, our ability to much better customize the hearing aids to our customers' hearing abilities. So that's point number one. And I think, what we have seen is people underestimate the amount of hand-holding required in, successful hearing aid wearers. And we definitely have a hybrid approach here. So, of course, we cannot hold every customer's hands the same way an audiologist would do, which of course has a potentially higher price point than we do. So we have a hybrid between using the technology available, to the customer, to use the service that, content delivery model. But then also we have our hearing experts available to our customers. So we find that about 1 in 5 of our customers do make contact with our hearing experts for some sort of remote adjustments to the hearing aids, which then facilitate them through either an onboarding process, how to properly get the hearing aids into the hearing, into the ears, to making certain adjustments to the hearing aids over time. And we found that specifically that first 30 to 60 days is the most important, kind of as the customers get used to the hearing aids. But of course, having that availability to our customers is fantastic. But what we also felt that was really needed with technology was the ability for us to give informative content to our customers on a daily or weekly basis. So, and that's where Lexi Rewards was born. So it's a behavior change model for consumers. And what it does is it really educates the consumer around what to expect. So it does a lot of expectation management on the hearing aids, but also to drive education. How do I clean my hearing aids? How do I take care of my hearing aids if I'm in a humid, environment? What to expect from, my days of wearing my hearing aids, right? And then also certain challenges to our consumers around how long to wear your hearing aids, day 1, and then, how long should I wear my hearing aids, week 2, etc. And a combination of, that educational content that was traditionally delivered through the audiologist or HCP, packaged in the technology solution, and then having access to these hearing aids at the back for more customized or personalized care. That combination paired with the personalization of the hearing aids, we found, really drives good customer satisfaction of our devices to date.
I've used the app, I tested out the product, and there is a great patient experience flow to it, and leading to quality hearing at a reasonable price. For those in our community who have tinnitus, looking for different tinnitus sound therapy features, there's some nuances to that based on the individual. And a lot of the online hearing aids today don't necessarily have inboard sound therapy or even streaming for sound therapy for tinnitus. That said, amplification through a hearing aid is the first place to go for help with hearing and tinnitus if you have both conditions. So you've taken the typical patient experience, used the technology to the best of its abilities, and through that, your company, HearX and Lexie Hearing, are offering telehealth solutions for hearing loss. Now, 5 years ago, this wasn't really possible with video conference software, potentially with the social adoption of such technology. Now, I believe, because I'm in this world as well, that telehealth in the last 5 years really just became possible with the technology and the social adoption. So what is the future of an in-person hearing clinic? How do you discuss that amongst your colleagues?
I think there's tons of opinions, and I'm sure depending on who you ask, you'll get a different answer, right? But if you had to ask me kind of where does the future lie for the speciality and for care for, customers that need hearing aids, I do think it's in a decentralized model. I don't think we'll be able to increase access from that current 30% to levels where we feel we need them to increase to, but not, of course, making it more accessible. And the way you can do that is making it, of course, decentralized. So using telemedicine platforms, like you've mentioned, we, of course, have our own built into our technology. But I do think where the future lies is a fully integrated, interoperable system where people are currently engaging with their health professional online through a telemedicine platform, but have the ability to then converse seamlessly into an audiological consultation as well, so that these don't live, I would say, mutually exclusive from one another, but actually integrated into a single engagement with a health professional. Of course, technology and apps and telemedicine software makes this possible for us. But health these days are not just siloed. I mean, hearing and vision and the sensories already go hand in hand. So we have to think about this holistically when we think about the way in which we go about telehealth. And if you ask me about, the future of clinics and where that needs to go, and I do think, with the rise of and the excitement around the new OTC legislations. And I mean, it's been a week since the draft has been published. And I mean, everyone is, is commenting and having some sort of opinion on where this is going. I do anticipate that, retailers with large footprints are definitely going to get into this space, solidify their dominance in this space. And it's just a much more scalable model, with regards to providing access to these devices. I don't think that I think the role of the audiologist is just going to change over time, being a much more decentralized role compared to having, necessary in-clinic visits. I'm not saying that's going to fall away, but I do think for that mild to moderate category customer, we can help them now remotely through, these telemedicine consults like you spoke about.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, these are holistic conditions. So for someone with hearing loss, the communication is often around social engagement, social isolation on the other side of that, family, friends, conversations, going out to restaurants, socializing, dinner time. You get to learn about someone pretty well. For tinnitus, for the work that we've been doing with our tinnitus patients, it's focused around sleep, anxiety, stress, quality of life, some psychology elements. And through our profession, we do get to learn a lot about our patients through the digital platform. We don't want to lose that. We want to keep that as close as possible. I know you guys agree with me. Now, switching it up a little bit, what have you learned in terms of your online hearing tests and online questionnaires? What is the take rate of that? Are patients using the online tests and the online questionnaires? And does that help the automated process, getting information to those hearing professionals to help make decisions on your team?
Yes, Ben, 100%, that's correct. What we have found is the hearing assessments and the questionnaires are top of funnel. People that, think that they might have a hearing loss or some sort of degree of hearing loss, would search online hearing tests versus, spending the time or the money necessarily to go to a clinic to get it done. And of course, the convenience of that as well, right? To confirm the suspicion. So what we have found is customers that do take on online hearing assessments, from there onward, the journey is give me as much information as possible. What are my options, right? And it's just to gauge the severity of the losses, right? And it's fascinating, of course, that self-reported hearing loss, we ask a lot of our customers, the beginning, before they actually take the test, if they think that they might have a hearing loss. And then, of course, they go through the test. And then there's such a direct correlation for those who said that, yes, that I think I have a hearing loss, to the confirmation at the end of the hearing test, right? That they have a hearing loss, which means that self-reported hearing loss is such a good indicator to people that will find benefit from, an amplification device over time. So the journey specifically for those customers, which, took the online questionnaire and the hearing assessment, is much longer to taking up a hearing, typical hearing aid than those, which are in that, state of mind to take a hearing aid. But what we have found is that kind of emotional element and understanding the reasons behind them seeking help. Is that a spouse, a significant other, a child, someone motivating them. And we see a lot of, interest specifically over the Christmas period or the festive season, where people spend time with family and friends, Thanksgiving, and then, their family and friends would tell them, Mom, Dad, you need a device or something to help you. I can see you're struggling. So it's very seasonal that we've seen the way in which people behave. And it's actually post these very festive seasons that we find a lot of engagement for the product. But coming back to the question you asked, what we've done is once we've identified someone with a potential hearing loss that's gone through the questionnaires or our online test, is that we guide our customers through, an educational journey through, text messages and emails to guide them through what the typical things they have to look out for, how they should communicate. And of course, if they want to trial one of our devices, they're also welcome to do so.
Yeah, the automated testing, the questionnaires, very useful. As you had mentioned, the holidays, family conversations. I have parents, both of age, where they're in that phase of really this mild to moderate category where they're getting by in most situations, but our family recognizes, hey, mom, hey, dad, they actually are having trouble hearing. We know it. Our family has 2 audiologists, myself and my older brother, both audiologists. Still, neither of them are consistently wearing hearing aids. They're right on that borderline mild level, but there are situations where they need help. How about for you and your family or your social networks? Do these topics of hearing come up day to day for you?
It's such a good question. So my mom actually wears hearing aids, and she got remarried, and her husband, much older than she is. All of us think that he has a much more severe hearing loss than she has. But of course, not in the state of mind, a couple of years ago to take up a hearing device. And they were visiting my wife and I over the weekend. And my mom said, "Can't I give one of my hearing aids to my husband? Can't you just set up the hearing aids so he can get one?" I'm like, it doesn't really work that way. But I can, of course, arrange a pair of hearing aids as a trial. And he was completely open to it. So I think it's just that stigma. Someone in the family wore them, could see the benefit. And actually what happened is my mom didn't wear her hearing aids for a couple of weeks. And he was like, "You should wear your hearing aids. You can't hear me." And he could see how important it was for her to wear her hearing aids. And then I think that realization around, oh my gosh, I'm sure she experienced the same with me, and I'm not even wearing them. So it took time, and we all know how long it takes a typical, wearing aid user from the first time they, find out they've got a hearing loss to actually seeking attention or medical attention to actually take up a hearing aid. So I do think as the stigma and everything around OTC hearing aids, kind of specifically more hearable products, prettier form factors come out, I do think people will be desensitized to the stigma associated with that, which hopefully will drive that typical age of customers down. And one additional topic, and just to mention this quick, is what we have found that's fascinating is customers which purchase that one-time payment on our subscriptions, a one-time payment, which is $7.99. 51% of those are new customers, which is typical to the industry average, right? I think it's 56% of customers are new. Our subscription customers, 93% of them are new customers, which means they're much more inclined to take up devices or to trial out on the subscription, just because it's such a lower barrier, right, to entry to it. And what's fascinating is our subscription customers are 7.5 years younger than our one-time customers, which means that age barrier, the gap, does come down with, I want to test this, but I'm not 100% ready to do it yet. Let me give it a trial.
Yeah, excellent. The age is coming down. The monthly membership model may be more appealing, lower barrier to entry, and then they're in and they're trying it. And there's no judgment. There's no shame in waiting to try hearing aids. All that we would want as professionals is for someone to give it an honest effort if there's signs from family or friends that I'm not hearing as well as I used to. Give it an honest effort. Most of the hearing devices have trial periods, and that's why they're there for your protection. Nic, I wanted to ask, my main last question here is going to be, what kind of parallel industries or markets have you studied, that whether that's vision with eyeglasses or different kinds of biotech medical markets that may give us some clues or some signs into how this progression of technology, hearing aids will change over time in our field for hearing?
Yeah, Ben, so very good question. And I think we picked this up, with our engagement with one of the big pharmacy retailers in the US, Walgreens. We have a couple of pilot stores with them, a couple hundred stores, and them going through the exercise around where does this product need to live, right? Does it fit in the hearing category? Is there a correlation between the eyes and ears, the senses? So I think everybody's asking this question, right? Where does hearing sit, and where does it from a commercial perspective? But to answer your question with regards to the other parallels in the markets that we've considered, and I do think vision, if you think about the typical customer, is one where there's a lot of correlation. In Europe, it's fascinating where big retailers like Specsavers are big sellers of hearing aids, right? I mean, a big majority of their revenue comes from not just selling eyeglasses, but also hearing aids. And in the US, I don't think that trend has really taken off as much as that has in markets like Europe and the UK. So I do think just because they service a very similar demographic, must be 10 years younger in the optometry space than hearing. But as that age in hearing is coming down, as we are seeing now, I do think that can intersect, and I do think it can play a very nice part. And because optometry, and I do think one of the barriers has been it's very expensive to set up, audiological services in existing optometry clinics. But if we think about telemedicine and remote consultations and OTC, scaling that into an existing footprint could become much simpler over time. So that's definitely one where we feel there's a lot of growth potential for our company. And I think where this market will also, and of course, there's a couple of others where we feel that, there can be growth. But of course, optometry must be one of the big key drivers where I'm sure a lot of competitors will go after.
Yeah, we're going to monitor that. Nic Klopper coming live from South Africa. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Ben Thompson. I'm an audiologist. Nic, any closing words for our community who has tinnitus and or hearing loss?
Ben, firstly, thank you for having me today. It was such a wonderful privilege. And then to the consumer out there, I think there's so many options available these days, from fancy devices to low-cost devices, different form factors. Test it out. I do think the time is now, and I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, excellent. We will be following Herex and Lexie Hearing. One thing I love about Lexi Hearing is that as new hearing aid technology comes out, as you develop those new developments and really new offerings to the space, the brand of Lexi Hearing will remain. So it's a virtual telehealth audiology center, and excited to see how that grows over time. Nic, thanks again. And for anyone who's listening, make sure to check out our other podcast episodes for detailed interviews and information about tinnitus and hearing loss. Thank you all. Take care. Bye.